saw gunfire coming from the hotel.
Go that way, go that way, go that way.
The type of weaponry and amount of weaponry in that room, it was pre-planned.
My mind was like, uh-oh, and boom, shot.
Head down, run that way.
And everyone's telling us to run as fast as you can.
Get back, get back.
The shots just kept coming. Oh my God.
We pray for the recovery of the injured. We stand together to help you carry your pain.
Welcome to this very special edition of Water's World. I'm Kennedy, in for Jesse tonight, live in New York. Now, nearly a week after our nation's most deadly shooting, investigators are desperately searching for clues as to what could have caused gunman Stephen Paddock to open fire from a high-rise Las Vegas hotel room, killing 58 concertgoers at a music festival below and wounding hundreds more. Dan Springer is live in Las Vegas with the latest. Dan?
Yeah, and Kennedy, it's frustrating, but there's still no motive out there, but we are still learning a lot more about the shooter's extensive planning. You know, we've talked a lot about this note that was found in the killer's hotel room up there on the 32nd floor, moments after they got inside there and found his dead body. Well, we know that there were numbers on that. It was not a suicide note, a lot of numbers. Well, now, according to CBS News, those numbers were actually a mathematical calculation so this killer could maximize the number of people killed, kill as many people as possible. Stephen Paddock wrote down the distance to the concert below, the drop from the 32nd floor, and the speed of the rounds to figure out where he had to aim to maximize the casualties. But 6 full days after the carnage, and police seem to have no idea what triggered Paddock. They've interviewed those closest to him, his girlfriend, his brother in Florida, no help. They've looked at his finances, his electronics, his last movements, nothing. And now the FBI is asking for the public's help putting up billboards around Las Vegas. Meantime, Vice President Mike Pence was here today helping the city and the entire country heal. He visited one of the several memorials, and he made some remarks at City Hall after a prayer walk.
We find comfort in the knowledge that we are united as one nation, as one people, with one voice, united in our grief, united in our support for those who have suffered, and united in our resolve to end such evil in our time.
And we know a lawsuit is coming. We don't know when, but probably sooner than later. A lawyer representing some of the victims' families has filed a petition with Clark County Court asking that the court freeze all of Stephen Paddock's assets. Remember, he is described by his brother as a multimillionaire and made $5 million a couple of years ago gambling. So there might be a lot of money. The lawyer says he's going to sue not only Paddock, but MGM and also the concert, the concert organizers. Kennedy?
Wow. Fascinating developments. Thanks so much, Dan. Sunday's horrific shooting shook the nation to its core and cast a dark and solemn shadow on the normally lively Las Vegas Strip. But one of Sin City's top performers says the show must go on. Joining me now, Mr. Las Vegas himself, Wayne Newton. Welcome to the show, Wayne.
Thank you, Kennedy. It's a great pleasure to be here.
I know this has been an incredibly tough week for you, as Las Vegas is a place that you love so, so much. Where were you when you found out about the shootings?
I was coming back from a show in Texas that I had done, and I had flown into Los Angeles on Sunday night and went to bed. My wife couldn't sleep, so she got up and turned on the television. And then with all the happenings that were going on, she awakened me, and we sat there and watched it the rest of the night, and then chartered a plane and came back to Vegas the first thing Monday morning.
I mean, Wayne, it had to be utter terror for you. I can only imagine the number of people that you know, socialize with, and have performed with. Did you know anyone who was at the show?
Yes, I did. In fact, one of my secretaries was at the show with her family, and a gentleman next to her got shot and succumbed to that bullet.
I'm so sorry.
So it was well, thank you very much. It was a horrendous thing. The community has come together. They're taking things to the hospital, to the families of the victims. I visited the hospital yesterday myself for about 6 hours and was just blown away by the efficiency of our medical division, our first responders, our police, even to the point where there were 8 surgeons out at Nellis Boulevard that came into the trauma center and offered their help, and they accepted, and they were a part of that also in helping to save.
And that's a really good point, Wayne. And seeing those people come together in some of the interviews with survivors, and you know, the situation that they put themselves in, not just the first responders, the off-duty police officers and firefighters and EMT personnel, but civilians who ran back into the venue to help those who had been shot and wounded, and to honor those who, unfortunately, like the person who was sitting next to your friend, who succumbed to their injuries, and you graciously donated $100,000 to the cause.
Yes, I did. My wife and I wanted to do that on behalf of the Casa de Shenandoah, our extended family, which is our home, and it has been wonderfully accepted, and we're very honored to be able to do that. So many people have given. People were coming to the hospital and handing blankets out and food and anything they could to the families of the victims who were still fighting for their life.
And those trying to figure out if their loved ones were in fact a part of the horror. So terrifying for so many who lost touch with their family members. Now, Wayne, Las Vegas is a place where people go to escape. It's a place where people go to have bachelorette parties and conventions, and it's a place to go have the time of your life. It is the ultimate escapism. So how long before Las Vegas is back on its feet?
I think it's getting back very quickly. There are some performers who took an entire week off, which I find nothing wrong with. God bless them, and we'll keep them in our prayers and best wishes also. There are those of us, like myself, who decided that to take one night off in honor of and tribute to the people that were killed and injured in that was necessary. But then I felt also that we as performers, we as entertainers, if we've been given any God-given talent at all, it is to be used in positive ways. And the positive ways to do that is to try and bring a moment of civility, a couple hours of entertainment, smiles to their face, memories that are not of this last weekend, and get people back on the road to healing as soon as possible.
That's absolutely right. And engage in something that should still bring us together, and that is music. And it just so shows the power of music that is capable not only of honoring that ultimate spirit of love and healing, but also binding people together positively, and you demonstrating that that's what you do. You get up and you move on.
Well, when I went on opening night, I took certain things out of the show that I thought might be a reminder of the last 2 or 3 days if someone wanted to take it to that extent. And I didn't even want to allow that to happen. So I changed the show around to where everything we were doing was simply for that audience and for them to have a good time and try and move away from the trauma for as long as they could, which I knew was the only way to heal and move forward.
And that's how you do it. Mr. Las Vegas, Wayne Newton, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Or should I say, Dankeschön. Still to come, the NFL's first female coach joins me with her take on Cam Newton's sexism controversy. Coming up next, former Congressman Jason Chaffetz's response to the left's accusation that the GOP is partly to blame for the Vegas massacre. Stay right here. Hi, Milwaukee. Welcome back to Water's World. I am Kennedy. Earlier this week, after meeting with top military commanders, President Trump made a comment that left everyone scratching their heads. Watch.
You guys know what this represents? Well, I don't know, maybe it's the calm before the storm.
What's the storm?
Could be the calm before the storm.
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Oh, mercy. And then just this afternoon, the president tweeted this cryptic message. Presidents and their administrations have been talking to North Korea for 25 years. Agreements made and massive amounts of money paid hasn't worked. Agreements violated before the ink was dry, making fools of U.S. negotiators. Sorry, but only one thing will work. So what is the president talking about? Joining me now with his take, it's Fox News contributor and former Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz. Congressman, welcome.
Hey, Kennedy.
Hi.
Glad to be with you.
Very good to see you this evening. So let's talk a little bit about the only thing that will work with North Korea. Please use your X-ray vision, your emotional X-ray vision, and peer into the mind of our own dear leader. What was the president talking about when he made those comments?
Nobody knows exactly, but I do. It's sort of Reagan-esque. There was a time in my lifetime when Ronald Reagan took a very tough stance, and I think the world understood that he might actually pull the trigger, and that caused a period of time where we were at more peace with Ronald Reagan than just about any time. So we have the world's greatest superpower. We have the military might to execute it, and now you have a president who's signaling to the world, i.e. China in particular, we will pull the trigger if we need to, and I think that's ratcheting it up so that there actually is some movement to calm the waters. That's my hope, at least.
Do you think the president is priming us, letting us know that it's about time that we need to? Is that what he's saying?
I think he's priming us a little bit, but I think he's also signaling to the world players, if you have the ability to influence the situation and take down Kim Jong-un a notch so that he doesn't do something stupid, now is the time to do it, because the United States is not going to just sit by, as they did with Barack Obama, and just, hope that one big group hug would actually solve the problem.
All right, and clearly a lot of times when the president talks and when he tweets, when he's talking about North Korea, he is talking to China, and it seems like the relationship has been a little bit more effective, and China has been much more amenable to imposing sanctions of their own when it comes to oil exports, textile exports, and some banking regulations that have been loopholes for essentially North Korean money laundering, for a way for them to get money and goods into their country. And China appears to be tightening the noose. Is it because of the president's effective messaging or something else?
Yeah, but I personally, I don't believe that we're one good package of sanctions away from having North Korea saying, oh, we better slow down. I think there is but one language that they speak, and that is the might of the military. And there has to be some pressure from China. We have to be in unison, obviously, with Japan and South Korea. New President Moon, took a very sort of dovish type approach, but he has actually ratcheted it up, too, because I think everybody's understanding the severity that they're demonstrating, that is, North Korea is demonstrating that they're able to deliver some very strong capabilities. And, when they tell you they're going to take you out, they tell you you're going to rain destruction on you, we're left with no choice but to believe them. So I think the president is positioning us to take some action, if need be, to protect the United States.
Yes, and he's doing his best to use his unpredictability to our advantage. Well, let's shift gears a little bit, because less than a day after the Las Vegas shooting, Democrats, who refer to themselves as the so-called compassionate party, took the spotlight off the victims and the heroes of the shooting and instead focused on their own liberal agenda. Watch.
They say it's inappropriate to be talking about it because it's too soon. Well, maybe it's too soon for you, because deep down inside, in your heart, you bear some responsibility.
The president, many Republicans want to put off a discussion on gun laws, obviously, put off permanently. They argue now's not the time, though there never will be a time. Those poor dears, they can't handle the conversation.
When 59 people lie dead, what happens is they roll out, and by they, it's not political will. This is a very deliberate, well-rehearsed series of things that the Republicans who are doing the work of the NRA roll out.
Motive and compassion be damned. Well, the same happened last week with President Trump's response to hurricane-ravaged Puerto Rico. The left claiming he didn't do enough because he doesn't care about them. So, Congressman Chaffetz, let's start with the reaction to the shooting in Las Vegas. You had family members who were not reunited with their families. They had no idea whether or not the concert goers they knew and loved had lived or died at the hands of a psychotic killer. We still don't know the motive behind the shootings. There are so many unanswered questions. Yet at 10:03 a.m., Hillary Clinton was tweeting about silencers and how somehow, if there had been an arbitrary law that would have stopped this person from mowing down as many people as he possibly could have. Your thoughts?
It really was disgusting. I mean, at a time we're still in shock and we're mourning. Look, everybody wishes you could put that genie back in the bottle and somehow make sure that that guy in that room with those guns was not able to do what he was able to do. And I wish there was some magical thing that any one of us could do to make that happen. But you've got to understand that we don't understand the motive. We don't understand what's going on here. And if the Democrats were actually true about what they're trying to say is they don't like the Constitution, they don't like the Second Amendment, and they don't want anybody to have any guns. But you know what? I do have a constitutional right to have guns. I happen to have 5 of them. I feel more comfortable with them. But I think the Republicans are willing to talk about a lot of different things, from mental health to how do we make the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms work better, to getting rid of these so-called bump stocks. But you had from Hillary Clinton to late night shows to this professor now at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, saying it was Donald Trump's fault. I mean, it really is disgusting, and it further separates the country. It doesn't bring us together.
No, you're absolutely right. And you bring up a good point about mental illness. And it's the one conversation that a lot of progressives don't want to have right now for whatever reason. If you don't understand the why, how on earth can you tackle the how? You know, how can we keep this from happening again? You can't unless you have those critical and honest discussions that move past the gun control talking points. Congressman, thank you so much for being here this evening. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kennedy. Appreciate it.
Very good. Coming up, the woman who admires First Lady Melania Trump so much, she had 9 plastic surgeries to look just like her. What a doppelganger. And, of course, it is Columbus Day weekend, which means it's time for a classic Waters World History quiz. You're not going to want to miss a minute of that. It's coming up.
Where did Columbus land when he touched down?
New York.
More south.
Boston.
Welcome back. First Lady Melania Trump always getting pummeled by the media for her beautiful appearance. From the heels she wore aboard Air Force One en route to Texas after Hurricane Harvey, to the Timberland she wore this week while visiting storm-ravaged Puerto Rico. Not everyone agrees. Some say she is a woman of strength and should be revered, not made fun of. In fact, Claudia Sierra admires Mrs. Trump so much, she had 9 plastic surgeries to look more like the First Lady. Yeah, Claudia joins me now, along with her plastic surgeon, Dr. Franklin Rose. Welcome to Waters World, both of you. My goodness, you look like the First Lady. Do people say that to you when they meet you, Claudia?
I have had several people say that to me. Similarities.
So, Claudia, I have to ask you, she does, Dr. Rose. Congratulations on your handiwork there. So I have to ask you, Claudia, it's quite an extreme route to take, to have 9 plastic surgeries to look like someone else. It might betray a little bit of uneasiness in your soul or mental state, perhaps. Why did you do it, dear?
My mental state is fine. It's firm. Okay. I look up to the First Lady for her grace and elegance.
Yes.
And she inspired me. So that's why I chose to look like her.
That's a lovely
I love
picture.
The First Lady.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I understand.
Well, Claudia looks great. She was very pretty to start, Kennedy, and she's very pretty to end. And you know, Melania Trump is an inspiration for all of us, quite honestly.
She is in a number of ways, and she's also a great philanthropist. So, Dr. Rose, I have to ask you, if someone comes into your office and says, I want 9 plastic surgeries to look like one of the most famous women in the world, do you ever pause for a moment and think there might be an underlying issue there, or do you just go ahead and do it?
10 would have been one too many. No, I'm just teasing, Kennedy. Actually, when these operations, you can certainly do multiple operations at one time. Everything's very subtle. You know, the rhinoplasty is subtle, the lift in here. She is a breast cancer survivor, I might add. You know, people talk about breast
implants. And God bless you for
her.
your fight, Claudia, because I read that. You were diagnosed at a young age. You persevered, and that was part of the motivation for your transformation.
Yes.
Right, so it was a reconstructive breast case. She is a mother of 2 beautiful children, so sort of a mommy makeover with liposuction and abdominoplasty. So yes, it sounds like a lot of procedures, but we do these, many plastic surgeons, many board-certified plastic surgeons all across this nation will do multiple procedures at once. It's very safe if it's a young, healthy patient like Claudia, and if they're well-selected operations and they're well-indicated operations.
Claudia, it made me sad because you said part of the reason you did it was because you were out there dating and the right guys weren't picking you. Are you happy?
I'm happy with myself, yes. And the dating world is very difficult. And I had had enough. And I just said, you know, it's time for me to change everything. And I went into Dr. Franklin Rose, and I feel like I've been reborn. And I'm very happy with everything, yes.
Have you had an invitation to the White House to meet Mrs. Trump in person?
well, maybe after this show you'll get us an invitation, Kennedy. That would be nice.
Yes, I've got a direct line.
That would be nice.
Some call it a back channel. I think it's more of a front channel. Well, good luck to both of you, especially you, Claudia. Thank you so much for sharing your story tonight.
Kennedy, if I may just give you regards from my daughter, Erica Rose.
Go ahead.
You interviewed her on the Fox Reality Network way back when she was on The Bachelor, and she's in the studio, and she sends you her best.
Bless her bones. I remember her. Please tell her hello.
I will.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kennedy.
Coming up, Hillary Clinton still reeling from her election loss, now claiming President Trump isn't taking his job seriously. What? Our panel weighs in. You got to stick around for that. It's coming up.
This is a Fox News alert. I'm Molly Line. Hurricane Nate making landfall near the mouth of the Mississippi River as a Category 1 storm, bringing winds of 85 miles per hour. Nate is the 4th major storm to hit the U.S. in less than 2 months. It's threatening parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama with torrential rains, flooding, winds reaching up to 100 miles an hour, and strong storm surges. The National Hurricane Center has issued a hurricane warning for that area, and the states have also declared states of emergency. Thousands from coastal areas have also evacuated to safety. Others have been ordered to shelter in place. Nate already wreaking havoc in Central America as a tropical storm. At least 30 people have been killed in Nicaragua, Honduras, and Costa Rica as the rain continues their concerns about flooding and landslides. Now back to Water's World.
From storms to potential war, so much going on in the world. And now this. Hillary Clinton continued her What Happened book tour this week. The former Secretary of State stopped by The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and once again took the opportunity to criticize the president she lost to.
If I'd lost to another Republican, somebody who I disagreed with, but who I thought was temperamentally capable of being president, who would take the job and the awesome responsibilities seriously, of course I'd be disappointed. But I wouldn't be so worried about my country and the world as I am now when I see what's going on every single day.
Oh, you're so worried. Well, President Trump isn't taking his job seriously. This coming from the woman who didn't take the election seriously enough to campaign in Wisconsin. But who am I to judge? Joining me now with their thoughts on all of this, correspondent for TYT Politics, Miki Konst is here, managing editor of Olympic Media, Katie Freitas, and Fox News radio host and comedian, Ben Kissel. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you. Hi, Kennedy. Hi. Good to talk to and see all of you this evening. So, Miki, I will start with you. You have been a big Bernie Sanders supporter. You have been critical of the former Secretary of State, yet she won't go away. Is this frustrating for you and your cause?
I believe in the First Amendment, and I believe that everybody who has a megaphone should be able to use it for the things that they believe in. This person is the former leader of the Democratic Party, and if she really believes that Donald Trump is a bad leader, I encourage her to show up on the streets with the rest of us who are fighting for a $15 minimum wage, for fighting for Medicare for all, who are actually in the resistance, rather than going on the book tour complaining about Bernie Sanders supporters, because that's all I heard the past 3 weeks, and then throwing one thing in about Donald Trump. But show up. I mean, go for it. Use your megaphone. I believe that she has the right to do that. Just follow your words and actually do it.
Well, that doesn't pay as much money as shilling on TV trying to sell that fascinating page turner. What happened? So, Katie, I will go to you next, because Republicans have to adore every time Mrs. Clinton opens her mouth and says something completely asinine or insensitive, whether it's about the president or the shooting in Las Vegas. Do you hope that she writes many sequels in order to further torpedo the Democratic Party?
Well, the Republicans should hope that she writes, a fourth book and a fifth book and a sixth, because this is only good for them. And Democrats have been saying, the murmurings have not been quiet, that they would just really love if she would go away. But this is just her endless pity party wrapped up in self-righteous indignation. She can't let it go. And even in that interview clip you showed, it still doesn't quite seem like it's registered to her that temperamental man, she lost to him because she is herself. And she can't blame anyone else.
All right, Ben Kissel, quickly before we have to move on, let me ask you, is the former First Lady just jealous?
I don't know if she's just jealous. Hillary Clinton made the Democratic Party the party of foreign intervention. If you look at what she did with Libya, and she also made the Democratic Party the party of the wealthy. 8 out of the 10 of the most wealthiest districts in this country went for the Democrats. And that's Hillary Clinton's duty, and she gave Donald Trump an opening that he went through.
He absolutely did. With the aid of Russia and James Comey. Nothing's fair, because the world hates women.
And Bernie Bros. Bernie Bros.
And Bernie Bros.
Obviously.
And Birkenstocks. Now, speaking of criticizing the president, it seems the late-night hosts never miss a chance to hit the commander-in-chief. Sometimes it's funny. Most of the time, it's just predictable and nasty. And this week, they took their monologues to a whole new level while discussing gun control.
Reportedly had 10 of them in his room, apparently legally. At least some of them were there legally. Why is that allowed? I don't know why our so-called leaders continue to allow this to happen. Or maybe a better question, why do we continue to let them to allow it to happen?
Just be honest and tell us, this is how it is. This is how it will continue to be. Instead of saying, this isn't the time to talk about it, just say, we're never going to talk about it.
Gun violence should not be a staple of American life. Some say it's too early to talk about gun control. For those victims last night, it's far too late.
No, Miki, what do you make of the predictable, uncreative, and manufactured talking points that all of these leftist hosts were employing so insensitively after the tragedy?
Well, just after 9/11, another horrible situation, so many different hosts took their political, their political beliefs and put them out there in the open. So I see this no different than other. It was a massacre. It was a massacre, and nothing is being done. Congress has not acted on it. The NRA is unwilling to do things that they were willing to do 20 years ago. So I think this is an opportunity for a lot of us to sit down and have a conversation with the rest of Americans, because CNN's not doing it, MSNBC's not doing it, Congress isn't doing it.
Well, Katie, I want to ask you: should Congress have already passed a law this week in the wake of Las Vegas before we even know the motive of the killer?
I don't think so. I would agree with Nomiki that it is important to have that dialogue, but at the same time, people are making all of these assumptions, jumping to conclusions about motives that we don't understand. We don't have all the facts. Clearly, with the bump stock, there's a lot of things that happened here, why he had so many guns, why he passed all these background checks, and people are just trying to throw things against the wall in the hopes that they can say, see, we passed a law and we helped. But these background check laws and these gun control laws, are they actually helping anything, or are they just making people feel better in the wake of a tragedy?
And
I think we need to take the time to find something that works.
I understand that. I understand the desire to explain this and make sure it never happens again. We just have to be careful to be logical and not react emotionally to something so horrific. Now, quickly, Ben, we're talking about the Constitution. We're talking about the Second Amendment. And, of course, these late-night hosts are employing their constitutional rights.
Of course, they have a First Amendment right. As Nomiki said earlier, the bump stock conversation is sort of like removing calories from a barbecue chicken sandwich. sandwich by taking out the barbecue sauce. It's sort of a symbolic Band-Aid. However, I think that something could be passed with that. The genie is out of the bottle when it comes to guns. There's 310 million guns in this country. They're not going anywhere. I think this involves a cultural shift. If you look at Hollywood after 2011, or after 2000 rather, gun violence in PG-13 movies has tripled. I think we're all complicit in this, and as a culture, we need to change. Get off social media, go talk to your neighbors, and perhaps we can prevent these mass shootings going on in the future.
All right, well said. No, Mickey, Katie, and Ben, thank you all so much. Great discussion.
Thanks, Kennedy.
Still to come, a classic Waters World Columbus Day quiz. But first, the NFL's very first female coach reacts to Cam Newton's insensitive response to a female reporter's question about football. That's coming up. Stay right here. Another week, another controversy for the NFL as Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton is facing severe backlash after making these comments to a female sports reporter.
It's funny to hear a female talk about routes. Like, it's funny.
Come on, man. Newton has since apologized for the perceived sexist remarks, but not without losing a lucrative endorsement with creamy Dannon yogurt. I spoke about this and shattering the glass ceiling in the NFL with Jen Welter, who made history in 2015, becoming the league's first female coach. She's also the author of a new book, Play Big.
What a dumb thing for him to say. Did you ever encounter that sort of overt sexism, like, this is a boys' club and I'm going to laugh at you for trying to be a part of it?
Well, you know, the first thing I want to say is relative to Cam, I know him. And we had a conversation after I met him on set of a show where he was showing a little girl how to play football. It was like her dream, and he was fantastic. And afterwards, he was kind of like, you know, Coach, it's like, I beat your team this year. And I said, yes, I know. And he's like, you weren't there. What would you have done differently if you were still there? And he was very curious, right? And I said, do you really want to know? He said, absolutely. I said, I would have played hard off the edge, kept you in the pocket, made you throw the ball, sent a spy on delayed blitz when we kept you pinned in, and by the way, taking out your tight end, right, by jamming him up on the line. And he just smiled. And he was like, well, that's a pretty good game plan. They probably should have kept you there. And so, to me, it's out of character for him. Okay. I won't stand up for what he said. It's obviously wrong. Any of us would be...
there are plenty of women who cover sports. There are plenty of female sportscasters and a lot of beat writers across the country who know the individual sports. And like you have played football. Absolutely. And that may be one of the things that keeps women from coaching, and a lot of color commentary in this country is not a lot of women play the sport.
Right, and it is. And that was one of the things, you know, people said, well, would they listen to you, and did you face sexism? Well, those guys saw me actually as more of an insider and more similar to them and being alike than different, because they knew how hard it was for me to get there. You know, some of the guys would say, oh my gosh, Coach, like, we thought it was tough for us, but for you, like, they knew everything about me. They knew that I had played women's football. They knew that I had played against men. And they were really actually excited and supportive. So though that comment is obviously something that we have to look at and address, I would say it is the exception, not the rule, at least in my experiences. And that's all I can speak from.
Yeah, but do you think you had to work twice as hard as a woman to get into a sport where very few have cracked the glass sideline, as they call it?
You know, for me, I hadn't thought of it as a possibility, and I think that that's the biggest thing.
How did you get the job?
I called the Cardinals on behalf of myself as if I wasn't myself. It's a full-time hustle being a female,
awesome.
Right? And that's one of those things where I say you had to work harder. But I was coaching in arena football at the time, and somebody asked Bruce Arians if he could ever see a female coaching in the NFL. And Bruce is the kind of guy who will tell you the truth. And he said the minute a woman can prove that she can make these guys better, she'll be hired. And so I called him. And I called on behalf of my head coach, you know, and coach to coach, you should talk to each other. And I kind of thought I had gotten blown off because I got to his assistant. And about 2 weeks later, I walked into practice, and my head coach was just elated. He said, you will never guess who I talked to yesterday for about an hour. And it was Bruce Arians.
Wow.
And he was committed to making that change because he had seen, or he at least liked the idea, because one of the best coaches he would tell you he was ever around was a coach named Dot Murphy. And she was a receivers coach. And he said, you know, the fact that it hasn't gotten any better, that it hasn't changed in all these years, like, to be able to do something about that, I'd like to.
Yeah,
said,
because if a man comes out, if Anderson Cooper comes out, people go, nah, who cares? If a woman is coaching in NFL football, it's much more of a surprise. It doesn't seem like it should be that way.
Right.
Do you want to continue to coach in the league?
I love coaching. I actually was the head coach of the Australian women's national team over the summer. Awesome. Helped them field their first team, which was an amazing challenge. And then this past weekend, ran a camp with Snoop's Youth Football League. I don't know if you guys didn't know he's a huge football guy.
He's a huge football fan. His son went to UCLA for a little bit.
And he has his own league. But this was brand new because it was me, Snoop, and Deshaun Foster, and we did a camp for all special needs kids.
And that's how you play big. Jen Welter, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Jen Welter, fantastic. Very interesting person. Okay, coming up next, the latest on Hurricane Nate's landfall along the Gulf Coast. Moments away. Stay here. Hurricane Nate bearing down on the Gulf Coast right now as we speak. The storm made landfall along the Mississippi River just a little while ago, packing winds in excess of 85 miles per hour. States of emergency have been declared across much of the region, including Gulfport, Mississippi, where we find our very own, very brave Phil Keating. Phil, what's happening out there?
Well, we are finally getting the strongest winds of the days and a very good outer band of rain from Hurricane Nate slamming into the seawall here. A lot of big splash from the Gulf of Mexico. The curfew's in effect, so we're really the only ones that are still outside. The Emergency Operations Center and the sheriff just simply don't want anyone out. It's dangerous, and the storm surge is the big issue in coastal Mississippi and coastal Alabama on the eastern side of this storm. But based on the latest satellite radar loop showing the storm approaching land, it does appear that the loosely organized center of the storm, you can't even really call it an eye, it's not a perfect circle, it looks like it did cross land as a Category 1 down in southeastern Louisiana around the mouth of the Mississippi River. So it's still approaching the rest of the Gulf Coast, and it's going to be several hours, maybe 4 to 6 hours of stronger winds, stronger rains, 4 to 6 inches much of the Gulf Coast here in Mississippi and Alabama. And, you know, nobody really needs to be out in this, and that's why the curfew's in effect, not only just for safety, just for it's miserable and dreary out, and everything, according to the experts, is going to get a lot worse, Kennedy.
Phil, but that's what you love. You love living on a razor's edge. The sea, the Gulf of Mexico right there could literally leap out from the convenient bounds and swallow you whole. Are you terrified, Phil?
I am not terrified. We're standing far enough away from the wall, but we are keeping a very close eye on all of the standing water here. It's just not draining, and so it's about half an inch all over the parking lot of this marina. Most of the boats were taken out of here, by the way, in the last couple of days. But one of the big concerns from emergency management director of Harrison County here in Gulfport and Biloxi is that we had 3 big monster Category 4 hurricanes slam the U.S. Now, all of a sudden, this was just going to be a Category 1, and they really were afraid everybody would just be dismissive of it and not take precautions. But it's coming ashore now.
Well, I hope you take precautions, Phil Keating, because I want to see your face tomorrow. Thank you for all that you do, and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Indeed, it's a great part of the country. You should go visit it, just not right now. Up next, Jesse finds out how much or little Americans know about the discovery of our country. A Watters World exclusive next.